Dean, you mentioned in your intro as you were speaking about learning of the Colfax Massacre and your connection to it, one of the words you used was embarrassment. You also said that you never learned of this, right? So you never learned it. Avery never learned it from his side of the family that was actually in Colfax, other than whispers. You didn't know about it at all, and your family's proud involvement, your ancestors' proud involvement in this. Why do you think this was concealed in a way? What do you think the reason is for the narrative to be changed or for it to not be spoken of at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that the white supremacists of the day, um, it's often said that the victors write history. Um, and so after it was over, they, in their view, they had done a great thing. They had prevented the blacks in Grant Parish from um, taking over the government in Grant Parish. And so they felt like they had done a great thing as far as they were concerned. Their view of black men, the black race um, was very low. They those guys didn't believe that that these people needed to be treated as normal citizens of the United States. And so it was sort of the great lie. The they wanted to continue the supremacy of whites in the South. They did not enjoy being beaten by the North, and so they were still upholding their views of how society to be run. And unfortunately, this massacre, which ended up in a court in the United States Supreme Court, Avery didn't uh, mention this, but 97 men were indicted for this, and they were not charged with murder under state law. They were charged with violating the 14th and 15th Amendment rights of these blacks. 9 people were eventually arrested, and 3 were convicted of in federal court in New Orleans for violating these rights. Unfortunately, they appealed, and the Supreme Court upheld their appeal and acquitted them. And so no one was ever punished for this massacre. Um, and then, as Charles Lane's book says, the end of Reconstruction in 1877 was in large part generated by this court case and the resulting um, uh, treatment of blacks in the late 70s by marauding Ku Klux Klan and the White League and other white supremacists who felt like this case, when these men were acquitted, opened the doors for, hey, we're not going to be getting in any trouble for um, taking these blacks down and putting them back in their place. So there were tons of murders and other massacres that happened after this that in large part started Jim Crow for the next 100 years. And so this small event in Colfax generated this dramatic impact on millions of black people for the next 100 years. And when I realized that, that's why I was embarrassed. I mean, it was bad enough that he did what he did in 1873, but the impact of what he and his friends did, the other men, was tremendous, and it really wasn't ever addressed. In the 60s, obviously, we had civil rights laws passed and began to change things, but that's a long time from 1873 for this sort of thing to have happened. So I believe that the white supremacists buried the truth, and it wasn't really resurrected until people started looking at the facts of this case, which was all in the newspapers and the court cases of the time, and these books that were written and a lot of articles in the 70s, 80s, and 90s and 2000s that uncovered the truth. And that's how I really learned about it, was reading. And Avery, like he said, he learned about it from his cousin. So it's an unfortunate situation that occurred, and Avery and I felt like we needed to get the truth out there more than it was. And so after we met, we began an effort to do something more than just a historical marker, which the police jury had refused to let us put another marker up on their property, telling the other facts. They felt like the facts were muddled and not clear, so they weren't sure. They weren't ready to let anything else be put up. But we were able to find another place, and instead of putting a historical marker up, we did a fundraising campaign. We started a nonprofit called the Colfax Memorial.org, and we began raising money, and we found that we raised enough money to put up a large memorial there in Colfax that told the true story of what happened, and listed the names of 56 men, 57 men that we know were killed. There's more, but we don't know their names. So we vetted those people. Charles Lane did all the work for us, and he wrote the story for us. And we have the names of the men who were killed and the names of the men who were wounded that we can vet and know that really happened. And that was installed on the 150th anniversary of the event on April 13th, 2023, and the governor came and dedicated the memorial, and we had a great event. About 150 people showed up, and a lot of media. We were able to get the message out nationwide, really, of what really happened. And so it's one of our goals, not only to memorialize these men, but to also make sure the true story is told, so the history can be corrected.
And Avery, as we talk about the impact on society, we're talking about an event that happened more than 150 years ago. But the climate of our nation seems to be rolling back in that era, maybe just in a different appearance. What would you say to people who say history is irrelevant to the present? What do you say to people who can't correlate the now and the then and look at the mistakes and the errors that were made then and see that we are kind of careening toward making those same types of mistakes? And
I would say to them that we are violating the old adage that those who don't learn from their history are doomed to repeat it. And that is what we are doing right now in America. We have not learned from our history because we have denied our history.